Hi folks, my name is Niall Devitt. I'm a Chief Strategy Officer with a company based here in Ireland called the Ahain Group. We're a social business consultancy for anyone who doesn't know what that means. Basically what we do is we help clients, both big and small, to, I suppose, deliver traditional business KPIs from the digital space. What I'm here to talk about today is managing the needs of the Facebook customer, or indeed what we've titled, or what's titled, social customer care. So effectively it's customer service using social media. Okay, so what is social customer service? Well, I suppose first we need to look at what social media is, and this is one of the, I suppose, the common kind of textbook definitions that you'll get of social media. So it's a catch-all term used to describe the tools and technologies that facilitate social interaction over the internet. What is social customer service? Social customer service is a measured and process-driven social framework to enable companies to monitor and manage conversations around their brands and products in a productive and efficient manner. Right? So both of those are a little bit wordy for me. I think someone who probably has a better definition on what this is a guy called Seth Godin in the US. I'm sure most people are familiar. And what does he say about social media? He says it's either a time-wasting, wool-gathering, yak-shaving waste of effort, or perhaps just maybe it's a crack in the wall between you and the rest of the world. It's a choice. It's up to you. So I suppose basically what he's saying is that ultimately digital or social media is not really about technology. To a certain extent, it's more about psychology. Okay, so the social customer, and just before I get into this, if I could just maybe get a quick show of hands in terms of how many people here have at some stage complained about a company, a brand, an organization online in some way, be it Twitter, Facebook, wherever. Okay. And how many of the people that put their hands up were satisfied with how the company responded to you online? Okay, I reckon about 50% or so. Okay. Anyone here, again, just a quick show of hands, in terms of their decision-making process, if they had a complaint in terms of a particular brand or a customer service experience, their preference would be to take that actual complaint onto digital or onto social media over traditional means such as call center, etc. Anyone have a preference of social media over or not? Okay, why? Do you mind me asking? Absolutely. So customers are smart, right? They know that if they take their complaint online in a public environment such as Twitter or Facebook, the likelihood is that company is going to be motivated more to solve their particular problem. Okay, so I suppose when it comes to engaging with or dialoguing with your customers online, I think very much it's no longer even about dialogue, it's about trialogue. So what does that mean? It means a common interest, which doesn't necessarily always need to be your brand or even your products. You know, it can be subject matter around that, but you've got to talk with and converse with your community and what it is that they're interested in. These are some of the things that the social customer wants, right? So they have a desire to be heard and respected. So again, you know, and this isn't necessarily just related to digital. There's nothing worse than having an issue with a particular product or a particular brand or a particular company, and you go online, you know, and you air whatever your grievance is, and you don't get any response, right? So if that happens, you get more angry, you get more frustrated, right? So companies need to be proactive in terms of hearing customers, and that isn't necessarily just when customers speak directly to the business online. It's also when they speak indirectly about the business, right? The social customer expects to obtain support via any channel. So if they're on Facebook, they expect to be dealt with on Facebook. They don't want to have to go to Twitter, or indeed they don't want to necessarily have to use email. They don't necessarily want to use the phone, vice versa. They expect customer-centric interfaces. They don't expect to have to jump through hoops to get whatever it is that they're looking for, right? And this is probably, I suppose, you know, very much coming, very much here today. They expect the capacity to be able to collaborate with the business. And if you look at the social business model, one of, I suppose, the tenets of that is that actually customers, right, should collaborate. They're stakeholders in terms of the business. We really need to listen to what it is that they want. Really need to listen to what it is that they need. Okay, and this is a relatively recent study. I'm sure it's probably gone up even since then. So 42% of customers complaining on social media expect a 60-minute response time. Right? That's a pretty high expectation, isn't it? It isn't always possible, of course, depending on the particular problem, that a business or an organization or a customer service team or department can solve whatever the problem is within 60 minutes. But what they can do as a minimum is they can communicate that they're working on whatever that problem is. And in most cases, that's going to be enough for the customer. Right? There tends to be, and I'm sure you'll see this, there tends to be somewhat of a differential between the various social media. So for instance, Twitter tends to be closer to real time than, say, Facebook is. Right now, again, it's not always true for each and every customer, but if someone complains on Twitter, they expect a response closer to real time, whereas typically on Facebook, they're prepared to wait a little bit more. Okay, and this was off the back of a study done by Gartner, and basically what they're saying is that organizations today who refuse to communicate with customers via social media will face the same level of wrath from customers as those that ignore the basic expectation to respond to emails and phone calls. So in other words, this isn't something that you need to prepare for. This is already here and now, and if your business, if your organization, doesn't provide the opportunity for customers to have a customer service experience via digital, well, the likelihood is one of your competitors probably already are. Okay, just a couple of quick social customer care case studies, and there are lots. So the first one is BT Retail in the UK. About 3 or 4 years ago, BT decided in the UK that they were going to invest a lot of time, money and personnel in terms of their online or digital customer service services. So they took a portion of their customer service team, they trained them up in digital, and they dedicated them to digital only channels. That was across Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, etc., etc., etc. We'll go into all the specifics of what they'd done. It was a pretty comprehensive piece. But they found after about 12 months or so, right, that the customers that I suppose were dealt with online turned out to be happier customers when they were surveyed than customers who were dealt with through traditional channels such as call centers, etc., etc. They also were able to work out for the volume of customer service that was achieved, right, they were saving themselves about 200,000 sterling per month. So not only was it more effective, it was also more efficient, right? When they started to feed into this knowledge, well, they said, hold on a second, how are our competitors performing? And what they found is some competitors were doing okay and some competitors were not doing. So they spotted at a competitive, I suppose, advantage or opportunity. So what they started to do then was not just monitor what was being said about their brand, but also start to monitor what was being said about their competitors online. In the event that a competitor wasn't reactive to a particular customer or an issue that they had, BT, in a very careful and respectful way, went in there and went after that particular customer. Right? So not only is social customer service a customer service activity, what you'll actually find is if you do really, really good customer service, it actually becomes a really, really effective sales and marketing activity as well. I would probably, at this stage, say that actually the most effective thing to do in terms of sales and marketing online is probably really good customer service. These guys, certainly in the airline industry, were, I suppose, innovators, and certainly they're very much up there in terms of businesses who do it really, really, really well. I don't remember the name of the volcano, maybe someone can remind me, but I don't even remember when the volcano in Iceland basically grounded the airline industry in Europe. KLM discovered, because they didn't have as many channels available to them as they normally would to communicate what was going on, so they started to broadcast some of that information via their digital channels. And what they found out very quickly is that information was reaching more people via social media than they could versus anything that they'd used previously. So this set off in their heads a little spark, and they said, well, hold on a second, you know, if we're able to manage a crisis situation like that and digital is more effective in doing that, you know, surely then the potential there for our day-to-day customer service. So they set up a centre, multilingual, it's 24 hours a day. I think it's staffed by about 30 people now, where they have a dedicated digital or social customer service team, and that has gone from strength to strength. Now that a lot of the other airliners, including Ryanair, recently have said that they're now going to invest some money and personnel in terms of their digital customer service as well. Okay, so you know, you don't want to do any of this stuff without it having I suppose a very real and meaningful result in terms of the business. You know, so some of the things that you know you should be doing. Again, I think it's important to be proactive. So it's not just the conversations that are directed towards you, it's also the conversations that are taking place about you. You know, and I suppose a lot of organizations now have a reasonably good methodology for dealing with conversations or indeed issues that come to them from customers. They're less effective in managing those conversations that take place you know, outside of that or indirectly about them. Right. It's important to identify influencers within your industry, to build relationships with them, to monitor your brand sentiment, to find new customers clearly, to identify and engage with unhappy customers. One of the things for me is, you know, you're not necessarily always going to turn an unhappy customer into a happy customer. You know, you can always try, but more often than not, it's actually those potential customers or other customers that are aware or listening in that conversation. They're really some of the people that you need to be particularly conscious of. Find out what customers want, and again, benchmark against your competition. Again, it's probably useful sometimes to look outside of your industry for some of the best of the best. And I'm sure everyone is familiar with who that is, but again, just a quotation, the nobodies are the new somebodies. So, you know, again, when it comes to social customer service, you know, and again, this is somewhat controversial perhaps, but if someone is quite influential, obviously they probably deserve a little bit of extra special care, and you need to be careful because they can do quite a lot of damage to your brand. And this is just a quick example of, I suppose, spotting an opportunity, something that was relatively cheap to do and ended it with quite a lot of exposure for a particular brand. And the company is Hertz in the US. So Shelley Palmer, who was a guy over there, he's a TV host. Right? He had a run-in in terms of the Californian toll booths over there. I think he couldn't pay by cash or something like that, which he was quite frustrated about. So he was less than happy, and he went and he blogged about the particular experience that he had. He had a Hertz rental car at the time. Now, it was nothing to do with Hertz, clearly, but the team in there spotted an opportunity, and they sent him, I think it was $50, wasn't it? $50 in terms of discounts for the toll booths over there. So he actually went on TV afterwards and spoke about this particular experience. So I don't know what his viewership was, but I'm sure it's substantial. So for 50 quid, it was a pretty good brand exposure for them. And again, a very simple thing to do. Okay, this is in relation to social bakers. Just looking at some of the socially devoted brands. If you can see that there, Facebook brands. First one there is Ireland, and the second one down is international. Interesting in an Irish context, if you look at the airlines, Aer Lingus have kind of come from nowhere in the last 12 or 24 months to right to the top. But you can see there, it's some industries tend to do a lot better than others. So telcos, for instance, in Ireland tend to do quite well. And again, you can see KLM, that's from the first quarter from 2014, there on the top there. Okay, these are some of the, and again, I know more people but these are some of the tools that are available out there in terms of listening to the conversation and managing and monitoring your brand sentiment and what's been said about you. And again, I suppose just a couple of, or some future trends to be aware of. Some of these are directly related, some of these are somewhat indirectly. So video certainly is continuing to evolve, and again, if you look at I suppose people of a younger demographic nowadays, you know, they don't necessarily want to have to read text in many cases. They prefer that you can send them a video, particularly if they have a customer service issue that, you know, can be relatively, so do you have videos to, I suppose, answer those 100 or 150 problems that tend to pop up, every now and then? Rich or unique content, thick content, and that's becoming vital in terms of search. If you're creating customer service type content, it has to be, I suppose, in-depth and comprehensive now. Social advertising is certainly becoming much more powerful. Interesting, I was chatting to a company from the US, and the Facebook campaigns that they're running, they target specific organizations. So typically they're targeting a business or an employee of those business to reach a key decision maker within the organization. So they've really taken it down in a kind of a minute detail. Private social networks, we're seeing this already, are continuing to thrive, and obviously the age of advocacy will arrive. So I'm Niall Devitt. We're at the Ahain Group on Twitter at Ahain Group.